Let me go ahead and hit that real quick. So we're really excited to have two people with such vast and deep experience dealing with children aging out of care. All of us have the same goal. We want these kids to better their lives. We want them to finish school, get their diploma, and if possible, pursue a continuing education, whether that's trade school, vocational school, or hopefully college. So working together, all of us together, we can set these kids up for the best possible outcome and the best opportunity for success. So give a round of applause and welcome to Drew and Brandi. Wave at them, thumbs up, hi, whatever you want to give them. And Brandi and Drew, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you guys share the screen, and I'll just kind of observe. Guys, as always, if you have questions, oh, in the chat box, Brandi has shared her PowerPoint presentation, and she has shared some documents in a PDF form. Those are in the chat box. You should be able to click on download and save those. I will also send those out to you when I send you the video link, but they are available now. As always, put your questions in there so you don't forget what they are. And then at the end, they'll go through those any way they want. And then, of course, you'll have an opportunity at the end as well. So welcome, Brandi and Drew, and the screen is yours.
Drew, gentlemen first.
Okay, yeah, so we're going to talk to you about a couple of the aftercare benefits for some of our foster youth. And the first, I think we're going to talk about the House bill. So House Bill 2537 went into effect in June of 2017, and it requires high school counselors to inform students in foster care about their post-secondary school benefits every year. What we've been seeing is that a lot of our counselors in high school do not know that this is a requirement, and they're not sure of what they need to share with students. So if you know of any counselors or ISDs, you have any connections with the ISDs, we'd be glad to present and give them some of this information.
So the first benefit we want to share with you guys is the Texas Tuition and Fee Waiver, which you've probably already heard of. This is what everyone associates with college and PAL benefits. This is done by the state of Texas, and it just lets a Texas public school know not to charge the student tuition and fees. So it's not physically going to give them any money. They give it to the school, and the school waives their tuition and fees. They do have to activate it by the time they're 25 by taking one college course. There's no age limit for them to enroll. Once they lock it in, they can take classes when they're 99 years old. There's no limit on credit hours. They don't ever have to physically graduate from college. They can just take as many classes as they would like at a Texas public school, and they'll never have to pay tuition and fees. It's not dependent on grades. So if they have a bad semester, they will never lose this benefit if they make bad grades. And technically, they can fail every class they ever take, and they will never lose this benefit. And it does work for online classes at Texas public schools. And then we don't want to read all of these off to you guys, but basically, if your student hits any one of these bullet points, they should qualify for the tuition and fee waiver. A lot of times, even when they're adopted at a young age, it's included in their subsidy. So just keep that in mind. And you guys will all have a copy of this and the PDF form. So you will have it in there. Don't feel like you need to write all of this down. So again, if they hit any one of these bullet points, they should qualify.
So the next aftercare benefit we're going to talk about is the Education and Training Voucher, which is the program that Brandi and I work for. A lot of times people get the ETV and the tuition waiver confused. So there are some differences. ETV is a federal need-based fund, meaning students will need to exhibit a need for the funds, so they can't fulfill that need with loans. ETV can provide up to $5,000 per school year to help pay for housing and utilities first. So if a student has a need for funding for housing or utilities, we will pay, ETV will pay those entities directly. After that, any funds left over would go to tuition and fees. Students may be attending a private school or vocational school, and they may not be able to use that tuition and fee waiver, so the funds will go there next. Once those three things have been taken care of, the funds go directly to the student. So any leftover funds can be used for personal living expenses, childcare, books and supplies. Most students buy a computer or a laptop. These funds can also be used for transportation, and by that I mean like a bus pass or a bicycle, or they can, even if they have a car already, they can use these funds for gas and insurance, registration, things like that, car maintenance. However, the federal government does not allow students to buy a car with these funds.
So in order to be eligible for ETV, students have to be at least 16 years old. Unlike the tuition and fee waiver that had all those instances where a student will qualify, there are only 3 where they'll qualify for ETV. One is they have to currently be in foster care, they have aged out of foster care, or they were adopted or entered the PCA program after turning 16. Any other scenario, they will not qualify for ETV. They go home to mom, they no longer qualify. If the judge transfers PMC or permanent managing conservatorship to grandma, they will no longer qualify. This is a new rule that just came out recently. They can only use this for a total of 15 semesters. That does not have to be consecutive, but any 15 semesters from the time they're 16 to the month of their 23rd birthday, that is it. So if they go year round from the time they're 16 to 21, then they will run out before their 23rd birthday. Usually that's not going to happen because if they're taking classes at 16, it's dual credit in high school. So that's only going to be 2 semesters a year. But basically, it will stop after their 15th semester or the month of their 23rd birthday.
So ETV can help with dual credits in high school. So if a student is taking dual credits in high school, they only need to be taking 1 college course in order to qualify. Once they graduate high school and go into a degree program or a technical vocational school, they'll need to be taking at least 6 semester hours. So in most traditional colleges, that's 2 classes. They can also use these funds, or they can also be eligible for ETV if they attend a technical vocational school. And because it's a federal fund, most students are able to take ETV to most schools around the nation as long as they have been accredited for at least 2 years.
So just to kind of recap, we talked about the tuition and fee waiver that's done by the state of Texas. It's only at Texas public schools. It's going to waive their tuition and fees. It's a lifetime benefit. They have to access prior to turning 25 by taking 1 college course, and there's no grade requirement ever. ETV is need-based, so if they fill all their financial aid need with loans, they may not qualify. It is also federally funded, so it can be used at private schools and out of the state of Texas. It's at any post-secondary educational institute that qualifies, so any private school would have to be accredited and have to have been in business for at least 2 years. It is going to be up to $5,000 a school year, split either 2 or 3 ways. It's from 16 to the month of their 23rd birthday, and they do have to make satisfactory academic progress by their school standards in order to keep ETV. There is some leeway in there if they have a bad semester. They are given the opportunity to bring their grades up. But if they continue to not make satisfactory academic progress, and again, this is set by each school, they will no longer qualify for ETV until they bring those grades up.
And then we do have a question in the chat. The question is a cell phone plan or cell phone considered a utility expense under the ETV benefits?
Yes.
And yes, the answer is yes. A cell phone plan would be considered a utility. And just going back to that last slide and how, just an example of how one of our students uses both of those benefits to basically maximize their success. We have a student that's attending Texas State. She is in extended care. She's in the SIL program, or Supervised Independent Living program, so she doesn't have any living expenses. She's also working 2 jobs. She's receiving her ETV. She's using her tuition waiver, and she's receiving that Pell Grant. As a sophomore, she's been able to save up over $20,000 already. And so she basically used ETV funds for anything that she needs for school, and she saves all the money that she makes on her 2 jobs. So it can be very beneficial. So the first step for applying for ETV would be to apply for financial aid. We just recently found out that all high school students are required to apply for financial aid in order to graduate. So this shouldn't be a problem for most students. We just want to remind that students can apply as early as October 1st of their senior year. And the earlier they apply for financial aid, the more likely they are to get some of those funds that are limited and on a first come, first served basis. Students that need help with their financial aid application can access their local transition center, and all transition centers have an education specialist who can help them with their financial aid application. And they can also go to their local college, even if they don't plan on attending that college. They can go to the office. They may have to self-identify, but that college should be able to help as long as they let them know that they've been in foster care. And then we always want to encourage students to turn down those loans, because they can affect how much ETV funding a student can get.
So this is a sample of a financial aid award letter. Basically, we just need to see what they accepted. There's actually a special formula now, but basically they're looking at the cost of attendance for the school. And of course, each school puts out their own cost of attendance. And we compare that to several factors, basically how many hours they're taking, and to just what some of their other circumstances are. And then we compare that the financial aid that they accept to include any loans is taken into effect. So we do like to discourage students from accepting loans, because it can affect how much ETV. And in fact, we've seen where it can disqualify them entirely. And of course, ETV is free money. So we want them to take all that free money and turn those loans down.
And then we have another question. What were the 3 requirements again for ETV? Someone has 6 adopted children, and they're wanting to know if those adopted children can tap into the ETV benefit.
They have to be adopted after their 16th birthday. If they're adopted before their 16th birthday, they won't qualify for ETV. And then the other 2 were that they're in foster care or they aged out of foster care.
Okay, so once a student has applied for financial aid, their next step is to apply for ETV. They can do that at our website at texasetv.com. There's an online application, so students can access it online and submit it virtually, or they can download it and submit it in paper or in writing. We of course encourage students to go ahead and submit it online, because our coordinators get it instantaneously and they can start processing those documents. On our website, you can also find important dates, eligibility guidelines, needed documents. There's also examples of some of the other documents that they'll need to submit along with their application. An online directory of schools. We usually have a school of the month, a school that's doing innovative things, and usually one that is working with foster youth. And then we have success stories. The student you see here is one of our success stories, and she's allowed us to use her picture for this presentation. And then, of course, we have a list of tutoring services, and it's most schools in the state of Texas, we have their tutoring contact information. And then we also have this chat feature on our website. It's a new chat feature. And basically, as long as the student is accessing our site, or professional is accessing our site between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. Business days, they are able to ask questions and get real-time answers to those questions.
So these are our application deadlines listed on our website. For this fall, we're taking applications until October 1st. They only have to do one application per school year. So the spring and summer deadlines only come into play if they don't fill one out in the fall. But I will let you guys know, because you're professionals, they will always have an extension until the end of the month. We don't like to let the students know that until October 1st because we want them to get it in. It does take 7 business days to process in our office, and then another 2 to 4 weeks for the check to come in. So it's very important that they get it done as soon as possible so they can get that money quickly. So we definitely don't want them waiting till October 31st, but they will have until October 31st to get the application done. And that actually does not include all the other paperwork. That's just the application deadline.
So here's just a couple things to keep in mind when a student is applying for ETV. They'll only need to submit 1 application per school year. After that, every school year or every semester after that, they'll just go in and update their application. We want to make sure that students check every semester they plan to attend. We have students that think they can apply for 1 semester and get the full $5,000 in that semester, and it doesn't work like that. The federal government actually penalizes them for only going 1 semester, and they're only eligible for $1,666.67. So we always encourage students, even if they're not sure they're going to more than 1 semester, they should apply for at least 2 semesters. When they're filling out their application, they'll also need to put their full legal name. We have students that are going through the adoption process, and they're changing their name. They may be going through a name change, but they need to put their full legal name at the time that they're filling out the application. They'll also need to fill out the entire application, and we have that chat feature on our website. So if they have any questions, they can ask questions right there while they're completing their application. And then at the end of this application, they have a choice to save and continue or submit. We have students that will fill out the entire application and then wonder why our coordinators haven't gotten back to them, but they never submitted their application. So we just want to make sure that they're clicking submit at the end. And then once their application has been submitted, they're also going to need to provide supplementary documentation. So for those documents, they don't need a scanner or anything. They can take screenshots, they can take pictures with their cell phone and email them to our coordinators. We just want to make sure that they get the entire document and make sure that it's legible for our coordinators. And then they'll also need to save a copy of those documents once they send them in, just in case the document wasn't legible or our coordinators need that document again, an updated version. And plus, students will sometimes take those documents and throw them in the nearest public trash can, and now they're susceptible for identity theft. So just make sure those students keep a copy of those documents. And then once a student submits their application or any other documentation, it's in our coordinator's contract to get back with them to process those documents within 7 business days, and they'll receive an email once those documents are processed.
So next, they're going to need to turn in their supplementary documents. So this is the initial application checklist. They'll need to do their application, and they can either do the online version or the paper version and send it in. These next 2 in red are the verification of eligibility and tuition and fee waiver. They get those from the Department of Family and Protective Services PAL, which it stands for Preparation for Adult Living Unit. They're only going to need to turn that in the very first time. Then we're going to need a financial aid award letter showing what they accepted. And by the way, this is also listed on our website as well. And they also get an email from their coordinator giving them what they need also. They'll also need a class schedule showing either that 1 dual credit class, or that they're taking 6 hours at a Texas public school, or that they're in an adequate technical vocational program. And then the budget worksheet and request of funds are 2 things that they download from our website and fill out, and we'll go over those here in just a second.
So here's an example of a class schedule. This class schedule has everything needed for ETV. However, if you can see in the red, this student is only taking 5 semester hours. Now, in order to be eligible for ETV, they would need to be taking 6 So our coordinators wouldn't just see this and say, sorry, you're not eligible, better luck next time. They're gonna work with the student in order to get them eligible for ETV. So if they have to drop a class and add another, or whatever they need to do, our coordinators will work with them so that they become eligible for ETV.
So the budget worksheet, like I said, is something you get off our website, and they turn this in once a year. It's nothing to get stressed out about. It's not set in stone. It is only to include ETV funding, no other jobs, scholarships, anything like that. They should budget for the semesters they said they were going to attend, so either fall and summer or fall, spring, and spring, or fall, spring, and summer. And then, of course, if they are in foster care, they should not be budgeting for living expenses because that is the responsibility of the placement. This is what that document looks like. As you can see at the top, there are the semesters. And by the way, we don't expect you guys to remember all of this. We just want you to introduce it to you so that if you're helping your student, you know, some of it might come back to you. But there's always, not only is there the budget worksheet on our website, there's a sample there as well. And then, like Drew said, you can always use that chat feature on our website to ask questions, or you're welcome to call one of us. So we have the semesters there at the top and the categories there at the left. If it fits in a category, it's allowed. So one of our rules is that students cannot use ETV for cosmetics. But if they're going to cosmetology school, that may be school supplies. So that's okay. So if it fits in one of those categories at the left, they can use it for that. They can split it up however they would like, as long as it's $2,500 per semester for 2 semesters, or $1,666.66 for 3 semesters. If your student only puts down 1 semester, the most they can get is $1,666.66. So it's very important that they always put at least 2, even if they think they may not go the 2nd semester.
So the next document would be the request of funds form. And this is basically a form where students will request the funds, and it lets us know where the funds are going and what they're for. So if a student is needing funds for housing, they'll also need to include their first and last page of their lease or the renting together contract. Some of our students may be staying with a friend or with grandmother, and they're not actually on the lease. The renting together contract can be used in place of that. And that renting together contract is also on our website. If a student is needing the funds for utilities, they'll also need to supply a copy of their utility bill. And then after those things have been taken care of, it would be a release of funds to the student. So here's an example of the request of funds form, and this is pretty straightforward. It's just a form to let us know who we're sending them funds to, where to send them, and what the funds are for. So at the top, you can see that this student is renting from Cousin Charlie. There's Cousin Charlie's address, and the funds are for the months of August, September, and October. It'd be a total of $1,500 at $500 a month. And then at the bottom, you would have the actual student's name and their contact information.
So things you need to know: ETV is not emergency funds. Students need to apply as soon as possible to get their paperwork turned in so they can get it before the end of the semester. Receipts are not required. We don't advertise that to the students, but we at BCFS will not be verifying what they purchased. We have to hope that they're going to spend it responsibly. I've had students ask me, well, what if I did buy a car with it? And I just let them know that they would be misappropriating government funds. The maximum $5,000 is not guaranteed. They do have to have a need for it, and they have to turn in the documentation. And then if a student only checks that they're going to attend 1 semester, the most they will get is $1,666.66.
So these are just some of the issues. I'm sure most of you are aware of these issues, but these are some of the issues that are facing our foster youth coming out of foster care. They're not sure about what they want to do and how they need to get there. Choosing an educational program can be tough for some of our students, and just helping them out in that process and letting them know the avenues that they can take to get to where they want to be can help a lot. And then how to get that free money, those financial aid the grants, the scholarships, how to get those and where to apply for those. Our students will need help with that. Then understanding the real cost of tuition, fees, schools, just living in general. Our students get the Pell Grant, they get the tuition and fee waiver, and then they get the ETV funds and they think they're rich. So just understanding that that money goes very fast and they're gonna have to really follow that budget in order to make it last through the whole school year. And then how to access resources in their community, of course, getting them connected with their local transition center, and career planning. A lot of our students are not taking the classes that will prepare them for the career that they want to go into in high school. We want to get them on that track early so they can be making progress towards their goals. And then academic support. While they're in high school, they get tons of support, and they have teachers that will let them know when they're slipping. But once they get to college, they're not going to have that support. They're going to have to go look for it. They're not going to have teachers, kind of like looking over their shoulder to make sure that they're succeeding. So just finding that support, and then developing and maintaining that budget for our students. Of course, most of them, this is their first time even completing a budget. So just helping them stick to that budget and making sure they're budgeting for the right things. And then, like all of us, just balancing life and taking care of their emotional and physical health, making sure that they're taking care of themselves is a big priority as well.
So ways that we can all help as professionals, building those relationships with our foster parents, direct care staff, any of our Department of Family and Protective Services staff, both the caseworkers and the preparation for adult living workers. Our aftercare service case managers, that would be the case managers at the transition centers. Our kids do get case management services after they leave foster care, and so it's very important that they get connected with their case manager before they leave. There's also foster care liaisons at the ISD and the college level. And so definitely when they're going to go away to college, getting them connected with those foster care liaisons. Of course, school counselors, community partners, and family-based organizations, just getting to know all of those people in your community that offer resources to your student.
So here's some ways that we can help as advocates, just talking to students about their plans, not only the students, but also their foster parents about their plans for post-secondary education. Our students, they're not aware a lot of times of all of the resources that they have available. And then making sure that the students are taking the classes that will prepare them for post-secondary education while they're in high school. And then if a student is not interested in traditional college, making sure that they understand there are technical vocational schools, and students can go to these schools and come out making more money sometimes than a person with a bachelor's degree. And it can be a really good avenue to take. And then just making sure that all seniors are applying for financial aid as close to October 1st as possible so they can make themselves eligible for any free money that they can get.
So this seems silly, but making sure your students have some tips for calling their coordinator. A lot of this generation, as you probably know, do not know how to use the phone. They know how to text and use social media, but when it actually comes to talking on the phone, they're a little lost. I've had students complain to me that they've called their coordinator numerous times and the coordinator hasn't called them back. And I always ask when was the last time you left them a message? And I get this deer in the headlights look, like, leave a message? Why on earth would I do that? So of course, that's very important that they leave a message. We do get hundreds of calls and we do have caller ID, but of course, if they don't leave us a message, there's no way to return all of those calls. So remind your student to please leave a message, leave their name, phone number, and maybe why they called so we can look up the answer before we call them back. Don't call multiple times in a short period of time and leave multiple messages, because then we have to listen to all of those before we can return their call. Give a professional 2 business days to call them back, and just remind them also to speak slowly and make sure that the person is going to understand their phone number so that they can return their phone call.
And this is a couple of ways you can set your student up for success. First is getting a free email account. A lot of our students use their high school email accounts or their college email account, and when they transfer schools or when they graduate, they lose that email. So having a free, reliable email account that they can access their emails from at any time is really important. And then also a checking account. Right now, we're still issuing checks, but starting October 1st, we will be starting direct deposit. So students will need a checking account, and they'll only be able to access their ETV funds without a checking account with special permission, which we're not even sure how they're going to get that yet, or what requirements they need to get that special permission. So they'll need a free email account and a checking account that can set the student up for success.
So as I mentioned before, there are foster care liaisons at the high school and the college level. And again, you guys are all welcome to a copy of this PowerPoint. I have the links in here. As you can see here, there's a link for where you can look up the ISD liaison. I also have where you can look up the college foster care liaison. And a lot of the foster care liaisons have started foster care alumni groups at their school. A lot of our students don't like to self-identify, but it's very important that they get connected with those college liaisons and alumni groups. That's an extra support system for them and extra resources. So make sure if your student is going to go away to college that they get connected with those groups and they know that it's okay. Self-identify and let them know that you're there.
So some of our students, during the breaks, they may have a problem with housing, but it is partly on the university or a post-secondary institution to help them find housing during these breaks. But the student will need to let the institution know ahead of time that they may have a problem with housing during spring break or summer break, and it'll be partly on the institution to help them find housing during those breaks.
And we do have a student at UTRGV that when COVID hit and all the kids were sent home, the school knew ahead of time that this student would have nowhere to go. And he's still in the dorms now, even though he's taking classes virtually. They didn't just kick him out and say, sorry, we're closing down the dorms. So it's very important that our students let the school know their situation.
And Brandi, I want to tag on that. I found out that at McMurray, not only are some of the kids staying in the dorms, but they are providing box meals to them so that the kids are able to have food and their shelter during this time.
Definitely. That's why it's very important that they not, always try to keep that a secret. They definitely need to make sure they're connecting with those resources. So you guys have probably heard of supervised independent living. And back when I was a caseworker, these things were few and far between. They are now spreading like fire at the college campuses, which is amazing. I wish I had had this when I was a caseworker. So what this means is students stay in extended foster care. At the college level, they're put in a dorm, they're given a meal plan, and a lot of times they have a stipend and maybe even issued a cell phone. So they get to stay under that umbrella of foster care, but they're living independent like a typical student. I'm sure you guys all remember how frustrating it was the first time you were 18 years old and you heard your parents say, my house, my rules, and you thought, I don't have to be here. And you can imagine when it's not your parents and it's not your home, how frustrating that can be. And they're just wanting some independence. So this is a really good way for them to go to college, feel like a typical student, but still have that safety net. So I want to mention Texas State Technical College to you guys. As you can see all the locations there on the right. This is one of 2 technical vocational schools that is actually a Texas public school. Most of your technical vocational schools in Texas are going to be private, so they can't use the tuition and fee waiver. They can only use ETV if it's accredited and has been in business for 2 years. Texas State Technical College and the Lamar Institute of Technology, which is in Beaumont, those are the only 2 that are Texas public schools. So that means students can use the tuition and fee waiver and ETV. And I know TSTC has amazing programs. I mean, they have like underwater welding. They have several contracts with aviation companies. So, any of your students that are not interested in a 2 or 4 year school, this is a really good option for them not to just age out and start working, you know, making minimum wage or maybe $1 above minimum wage, thinking they have it made. Then the University of Texas, they have supervised independent living on their campus. They also have a summer bridge program. They take up to 15 students every summer, students coming out of foster care that are new to the university. And they put them in a dorm, give them a meal plan. They have a stipend. They take a small course load together. They have mandatory study times. They do have to take a College 101 class. And in fact, that College 101 class kind of teaches them all about the school, best practices. They even have Drew and I come out and do an application session so that they get their ETV. So amazing program. And they have a hard time filling those 15 spots, believe it or not. So if you have any students, and of course, University of North Texas is located in Denton, which is just north of Dallas. So then there's the Texas A&M system, which actually was one of the first to adopt supervised independent living system-wide. And they really started a program unlike any other. And I've been to 3 national conferences, and I've never seen anywhere else at any other college campus that has programs like we do here in Texas. But I also want to mention Texas A&M San Antonio in particular, because we have a pilot program going on here in Bexar County, and our schools, Texas A&M San Antonio, UT San Antonio, and the Alamo Community College system, they're all getting grant money for wraparound services for our students, either living in the supervised independent living, which means they're in extended foster care, or even the kids who aged out. But any students coming from foster care or even were adopted, they have those wraparound services available to them. They have like a food pantry, hygiene pantry. They have a room full of school supplies, all kinds of neat resources for our students. So again, that's Texas A&M San Antonio, University of Texas San Antonio, which also does have supervised independent living. But they have not, University of Texas has not gone system-wide. It's only at a couple of select schools. And then the Alamo Community Colleges here in San Antonio, of course, they don't have dorms, so they don't have supervised independent living, but they may be contracting with an apartment complex soon. So we'll see how that goes. And hopefully this pilot will go statewide. In researching for my own student, I discovered that these Ivy League schools, when a parent's salary, and this is for any kids, not just foster kids, when the parent's salary is less than $70,000, some it's upwards of $150,000, they don't charge tuition and fees. So a student would not be charged tuition and fees, and they can take ETV with them. And what an opportunity this would be if they have the test scores and the grades to get into one of these schools. Now, I highly, highly recommend, this is my disclaimer, they need to take that one class at a Texas public school and lock in that tuition and fee waiver for life, but then they could leave and go to one of these schools, but they always have that option to go to a Texas school later and not be charged tuition and fees.
So here's a map of the DFPS regions. Sometimes they get confused with the ISD regions. I think ISD has 20 regions, but there are 11 DFPS regions in the state of Texas, and there are at least one transition center in each region.
And of course, you guys are there in Abilene, so you're in Region 2.
And these are just some of the resources that our youth can access at the transition centers. First of all, they have the case manager, and just coming from case management myself, I know how much we help the youth as far as just getting life started, you know, getting their ID and making sure that they have their Medicaid and health insurance together. There's also housing assistance, transportation assistance. There's always a Texas workforce advocate on site, as well as an education specialist. And then at our center, we also offer free mental health counseling through our Resiliency Through Healing program. And there's also a computer lab, so if students need to go apply for jobs or apply for college or do their FAFSA, they can go there and get that done too. And then also, the most recent numbers that I've heard were that approximately 50% of youth that are aging out of foster care become homeless within the first 2 years of aging out. And I know at our center, we have kids that just come in just to get off the street and have a safe place. And they're able to access a kitchen and make themselves a meal. We also provide free parenting classes and free substance abuse counseling.
So this is y'all's Region 2 Transition Center there in Abilene, and that one is also done by BCFS. Of course, the transition centers can be done by different entities based on the region, but BCFS does y'all's in Abilene and also ours in San Antonio. We also have Region 4 and Region 5. No, I'm sorry, it was Region 4. I was right the first time. So Region 2, 4, 8, and 11. There we go.
So here's the information for the ETV program. If you have a student that is attending school, that will be attending school in your region, you can go ahead and give us a call. It will ask you, our system will ask you what region you're calling from, and you'll be directed to the coordinator that takes care of that region.
So this is your Region 2 ETV Coordinator, Diana Paulin. You guys are always welcome. Don't hesitate to reach out to Drew or I if you ever have any questions about anything in this PowerPoint or general questions about ETV or our website. But just keep in mind, once your student applies for ETV and you're wanting to know the status of their application, best practice is always to reach out to Diana. Drew and I don't always have access to that information. And Diana's the one who actually processes it. So she's gonna be way better versed at everything with their application status.
And here's the information for Brandi and myself. If you know of anyone that would like more information about ETV, or you have even a student that needs just general information or how to get it started, you can always contact Brandi or myself at either through email or by phone.
Monica McDonald is our supervisor. If you ever have a problem or you can't get a hold of Diana, you are always welcome to contact her if there are any issues going on. And then this is, you guys have switched over to privatization, and I hope Kimberly is still the person. So that's what it says on the DFPS website. So this is Kimberly's information for To Engage, and she's going to be your Region 2 PAL coordinator. And then, of course, you guys mentioned that y'all are going to have Debbie Welborn come out for your next training. She is amazing. I do not tell everybody this. She is the best education specialist in Texas. She is absolutely awesome. She is up on everything, very knowledgeable. She has trained several of the other education specialists herself because she used to actually cover like 3 or 4 regions in Texas. And they finally let this poor woman have a break and just gave her Region 2. But I love Debbie Welborn. So anyway, I'm sure she's going to have a lot of good information for you guys. You should definitely attend her training next month. And then this is the foster care ombudsman information. Make sure that your students have access to this information. While this isn't to report abuse or neglect, this is the foster care ombudsman that is dedicated to your students. So if they have any complaints, if they feel like they're not being treated fairly, or they're just maybe all of their rights are not being, maybe they have a religious issue going on because they're not being allowed to practice, but nothing that would be considered abuse or neglect, that definitely needs to go to the regular hotline. This is a number where your students can kind of make any type of complaint if they feel like their needs are not being addressed fairly.
And then we just want to remind you that our website is texasetv.com. And if you're on the website and have any questions, you can always use that chat feature to get real-time answers to your questions.
Sorry, and then we're using Remind to send out any kind of ETV reminders. Also, we'll be sending out one on October 1st about that FAFSA application along with the link. We've actually been doing trivia quizzes with the students to kind of keep them engaged so they won't unsubscribe. So we give them tips about ETV or financial aid, and then we ask trivia questions, and if they're one of the first ones to respond, they get prizes, and we mail it out to them right now. So we mail care packages out to them. This is y'all's Remind code for CASA professionals. So you can either go to the website and join the class CASA ETV, or you can text at CASA ETV to 81010. And then we also have a code here for your students. Their class is ETV 21, and the 21 just stands for the 2021 school year. So easy to remember, ETV 21. So please pass that along. It is a voluntary joining. We can't sign anyone up. They have to join themselves. I can send you a link if that would be easier. So just let me know.
And then we also invite you to like us on Facebook. This is a great resource for students and professionals as well. There we have current events, what's going on with ETV and what may be going on in different communities around the state. We also offer some freebies for students. There's information on Texas schools that are doing really innovative things, who's hiring around Texas. So those jobs that students can use, those summer jobs that students can use around the state of Texas. And also national celebration days. I know that National Coffee Day is coming up, and Brandi updates this site every hour in order to let you know where to get free coffee. So you might want to like us before then. And then we also have success stories and natural disaster preparation. And of course, we have COVID resources as well.
So these are some scholarship databases. I have 2 slides of them for you. So pass these along to your students, have them look for those scholarships. There's plenty of them out there. Scholarships for being left-handed. They just need to look for them and apply. Take all that free money, turn those loans down. Just say no to loans. Those are evil. Just say no. And so we also have 2 here that are from DFPS. So make sure they're applying for those. And then we have some extra resources here if you need to know who an education specialist is in another region. I have the listing there. All the preparation for adult living coordinators, all the transition centers in Texas, all the supervised independent living providers, and then Texas Youth Connection and College for All Texans, 2 really awesome websites when students are like preparing to go to college. So do you guys have any other questions? I know there were 2 that we didn't technically address directly, because there was the question about if they're in extended foster care and being able to budget for living expenses. And unfortunately, because they're given a stipend, they are not able to budget for living expenses. And then also, Drew, I think, did address that we are doing checks until October 1st. And once October 1st hits, students will be required to have a bank account, because we will be doing direct deposit only. They have to get special permission to no longer do direct deposit.
Brandi, on follow up on that, I know that on the presentation, if it's for rent, the check goes directly to the person that's providing the housing. If it is for tuition, do those funds go directly to the school? If it's
yes,
a vocational school?
Keep in mind though, if they're at a Texas public school, their tuition and fees is going to be covered by the tuition and fee waiver. So that's not so that would only be valid if it's a private school, like maybe they're going to Baylor, or they're going to a private technical vocational school. And then yes, it would go directly to the school, as well as if we're paying for the dorm, that would go directly to the school as well.
So everything else for their school supplies, for books, anything else, cell phone, it's going to come to the student. And so they have to be able to budget that funds out, correct?
Yes, anything other than living expense or the housing, utility, and then the tuition and fees. Everything else they have to budget themselves. And once they do turn 21, the full amount will go to them. We no longer pay those for them unless they ask us to, just because we feel like at that point they're a little more mature and maybe they can handle it. But when they're 18, before they turn 21, we send it directly to those entities because we don't want them homeless in the middle of a semester.
Okay, so our kids now, if they don't have a bank account, we need to get them set up with one, help them prepare and be ready to go. Is that a service that you guys help them with, or do we need to just kind of guide them and direct them on getting that bank account set up?
I don't think there's, well, Drew, you might be better able to answer that with the aftercare case management. But prior to an aftercare case manager, I'm not aware of anyone that does that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely a job that the case management would help with. But as far as ETV, we don't help provide that.
So we need to put that on our list. If we have older teens, that's one of those things we need to put on our checklist to communicate with the team and make sure that's being done for them. Let's see, other questions in the box?
And really quick, just because I know you guys are like on an hour limit, I do want to put this link in the chat. This is it's a really quick survey that'll take like 30 seconds. State office has asked us to do this. But you can click on that and let Drew and I know how we did. Let us know what you liked and what you didn't like. And I know it was a lot of information in a short, compressed period of time. It was great. But please, if you wouldn't mind doing that. And I know that there is also a question in the chat. So I'm sorry, where were we?
Well, one of them said that her adopted child took 4 classes at Cisco, failed and dropped out. Did that enrollment start the tuition waiver, or will she need to go back or look at that to confirm?
So is Cisco, I'm not very familiar with that school. Is that a Texas public school?
Yes.
So then if the student presented their tuition and fee waiver, that's one problem that we've had is students sometimes don't even use it. So if they didn't present it to the school, and I don't know how that works if they go present it after the fact. Sometimes I'm assuming that, you know, because state office just has to say that that's okay. But yes, if they were using it, even no matter what the outcome was, even if it's dual credit in high school and they actually aren't charged any tuition and fees because it's a free class, if they still present it to the school that class is through, that should lock in that tuition and fee waiver for life. It doesn't matter if they had to pay for it. We
find out if they presented that or not. So they would need to kind of do some research. And she asked the same thing, if a child was failing and threatened to be put on academic suspension, but the ETV benefits are not tied to grades, again, correct?
So keep in mind, ETV, it waives their tuition and fees, but if they get put on academic probation or basically kicked out of school for grades, there's not really anything that the tuition and fee waiver or ETV can do about that, because that's more about paying for the classes that are there. Okay. If the school says that their grades are too bad for them to return to the school, then they would just have to go to another school and then they could use their tuition and fee waiver again. ETV, it would depend on where they were, because they are given a little bit of leeway to get their grades up, but there's, and I'm sorry, it's kind of all new now and there's kind of a special formula for it. But I think like they can have up to 7 semesters where at different times where they can be below the making the satisfactory academic progress, but if they go over 7, then they'll lose ETV, possibly permanently. So, but it's a whole new situation that state office is working out, and they haven't even really given us all the information on it. But they do have to make satisfactory academic progress, or they could lose it if they don't bring their grades up right away.
Okay.
For ETV, not for the tuition and fee waiver. That they'll never lose.
Okay. Deborah, you had a couple other questions. I'm just going to recommend you probably reach out by email to, what was our local person for Region 2?
That was the Kimberly.
Yeah, Kimberly, yeah. And you can go back and look at this, or we can pass that email along. Does anyone else have any other questions? And while you're doing that, I'm going to have Brandi pick a number for me between 1 and 17.
6.
Miss Deborah Jones. I think Deborah's still on here. She gets a Chick-fil-A card, and she is. So Deborah, I'm going to put your name on this card. It's a little $5 gift card to Chick-fil-A. And then Drew, do you want to pick a number for me?
4.
Rob Davidson, you get a Big Country Coffee gift card. Woo woo. So actually, I'll have your name on these, but I could easily mail these out. So if you're going to come up, shoot me an email. If not, I'll stick it in the mail to you, okay?
Oh, and I'm so sorry. I completely forgot. So for those of you that do our survey, we have these new Bluetooth trackers. I don't know if y'all have heard of like the tiles. Yeah. We have these Bluetooth trackers that we would like to send to anyone who participates in our survey. You can just email me. My email's right over my shoulder, or I'm sure you can also get my email address out to everyone as well. But just email me your mailing address and I'll send you a Bluetooth tracker for participating in our survey.
Cool. All right, guys, so do the survey. I'm writing this down. All right.
Here,
do
I'll
we
even
have
put it
any
back in the
other
chat
questions?
again. And, you know, I did see that question from Sue, and I do want to say that actually, she would actually probably want to reach out to our Abilene BCFS office, because that's where the aftercare case manager is going to be and where they can help set up that bank account.
Okay, good. Anyone else have any other questions? You guys, this was great information, and it's amazing to me how many benefits we have for these children, and yet less than 2% take advantage of it. And as an advocate, that's part of our responsibility and part of our privilege to help them dream and to help them look beyond what they know, what the norm is, what the family's always done. You guys heard me mention last week or the week before that I have a child that a teen that just started at Cisco. She's the first one out of 7 kids to get a high school diploma and then to go on and try to pursue something for college. And so she wants to be a beautician. She's looking for a 2-year degree. So help them dream and help them accomplish these goals. And if we can do that, then they're set up for a better opportunity for success as an adult. And we want them to succeed. So Brandi, Drew, anything else you guys want to say to us before we go?
I just want to add, just on adding on to what you just said, I think it's also really important to get them connected with all those resources. That's one of the things that's, I was a caseworker for 7 years. I've also been a case manager with a child placing agency. And when I came into this position 3 years ago, there are just so many entities that they're not even familiar with what the other entities do. When I went to El Paso, the CASA there in El Paso didn't know about the transition center, and the transition center had no clue who CASA was. So we had a CASA training at the transition center to introduce them to each other so they could start working together. And so that's kind of one of the things Drew and I try to do when we see these holes. We try to connect things, and that's why our presentation has become so much more than just about ETV, which is what we were hired for. As we've seen where people are not aware of these other things and getting the tuition and fee waiver and ETV confused, we try to share all of that with you guys so you realize that you have way more than one tool in your box and way more than one resource. And that's why we actually do read those surveys and we take it to heart, because we really want to know the best way to give you guys as much information as we can.
Well, it's been wonderful from our perspective. You guys, I was telling Brandi earlier, last year when Claudia did the presentation, one of our advocates was in the room. It was in person. And she had a teenager that was trying to get all of her benefits lined out and get her application done. And she was just feeling really overwhelmed. She was having a difficult time. Things weren't going well. And so the advocate just grabbed her afterwards and said, hey, could you help? And she said, yeah, meet me over at the office in 10 minutes. And she grabbed the kid. They went over there and got everything lined out quickly. They are here to help you. They're here to guide us. They're here to direct us. They want these kids to succeed. So tap into these resources and reach out to the people that Brandi and Drew provided the information for, and we can together help these kids. So thank you guys so very much. And you guys, give them a thank you.
Thank you all so much for having us.
Thank you, Brandi. Thank you, Drew. And you guys have a great afternoon. Everyone, thank you for attending. We'll get your hours entered. So thank you. And I'll send out the link to this later today.